Why did Maru completely change his playstyle? Is Harstem already out clubbing once again? How did Homestory Cup XXI turn into a game of musical chairs? And what is the origin of the Hamsters name? For the answers to all of these questions, stay tuned to this week's episode of Starcraft Today.
Starcraft Today. Your favorite Starcraft news show.
The long-awaited return to offline play at Homestory Cup XXI was plagued by a very confusing and non-stopping series of lineup changes as we had 10 whole replacements. The Vietnamese player Mio Maika could not secure a visa in time and thus was replaced by the British-Pakistani Terran Raza. Then the Chinese Protoss Cyan could not participate, and as none of his regional colleagues accepted the invitation, Korean Terran Ryang was invited from the global standings. A lot of other Koreans forfeited their spot though, as Armani broke his hand while Hero, Ragnarok and DRG had scheduling issues and preferred to play in the GSL Code S over Homestory Cup. They were replaced by Gumiho, Shadone, Euthermal and Su, who initially forfeited his spot to the Canadian Protoss Trigger as he was unable to get a passport in time. So Su qualified regularly, forfeited his spot due to passport issues and then got re-invited to replace Ragnarok as he suddenly did get his passport in time. You guys still with me here? Next, the Korean Terran duo Bunny and Byan elected to not participate due to health concerns as well as COVID recovery and were thus replaced by DNS and Petit Drogo. Last but not least, Christiana forfeited his spot due to undisclosed health issues, which are rumored to be quite unique. He was supposed to be replaced by Special, who had to decline as they could not figure out any travel arrangements in the short time. For the same reason, the next player on the list, Vindicta, was also scrapped as the replacement and the lucky third, T-Bull, took the spot. So around a third of the roster got swapped out due to various reasons and we ended up with a very Protoss heavy lineup of 18 Protoss, 8 Terrans and just 6 Zergs, with also a lot less Korean participants than expected. But let's finally get into the games. The first two groups have been played already and Group A had quite the surprise for us. Hero Marine, Big Gabe, overall considered one of Europe's very best, only advanced in 4th place, nearly being knocked out. And it's not Reynor or Serral above him, no, he lost to Spirit, Neep and Elaser, who all finished the group above him. And in 5th place we have the Korean Protoss player Classic. The multiple GSL winner did not manage to get into the double elimination playoffs, which can definitely be considered a minor or even major upset. Group B was definitely playing out more as expected. Reynor finished in 1st above Lambo in 2nd. The 3rd place was yet another Zerg in Solar and Euthermal advanced in 4th. All 4 Protoss players of the group did not manage to advance, with Harstem coming the closest in 5th, only dropping out due to map score. Continuing the StarCraft 2 action with the last matches of the GSL Code S Season 2 group stage. The day began very one-sided as Dark won both of his matches against Creator and Ragnarok 2-0 and safely qualified directly for the playoffs semifinals. Cure on the other hand had a bad day. After losing his TVT against Bunny 2-0, he was out of the tournament already and his match against Creator became a bit of a show match for both of them. But after going up 1-0 on 2000 atmospheres with a strong Biomine medevac push, Cure could not close it out. Creator dominates the next 2 maps and takes the 2-1 victory, but still cannot qualify for the next round. Cure actually goes 0-4 in this stacked group. The very last match of the group stage was Bunny vs Ragnarok, and they fought for the 2nd place and therefore the better seeding in the round of 6. In game 1, Ragnarok built a massive Bane Muta Ultra Force and just rolled over Bunny without any mercy. The very next game, Bunny had to defend an overwhelming Lingbane Roach Ravager attack at his 3rd base, but with some nice splits and a somewhat immortal tank in his mineral line, he miraculously survived everything thrown at him and barely held on. So it turned into a 33-minute slugfest with Ragnarok continuously dictating the pace of the game and taking over the whole map, bringing Bunny down to just 66 supply at times. But the Terran just keeps on fighting, and to this day people aren't sure how exactly he did not lose this game. he somehow nearly Maru-esque claws himself back into it, wins the final fight at once again his third base and takes game 2. The last match on 2000 Atmospheres once again led into a late game with powerful armies, but Bunny actually maxing out this time around. As the map is pretty much mined out, Ragnarok pushes into the Terran base with his massive Broodlord force, but the young Team Envy talent holds his ground with Thors and Ghosts and takes the match as well as the second place and therefore the higher seeding. And this higher seeding saw him playing for the direct playoffs qualification against his former teammate Maru, who he actually beat 3-1. Maru was probably the favorite in this matchup, but the on-site gaming athlete stood no chance against Bunny's great late game army control. This means Bunny advanced while Maru had to take a second chance in the decider match. And his opponent was a Zerg for sure, as it would be the winner of the third place duel, in which DRG made quick work of Ragnarok. Not a single map reaching the 10-minute mark, DRG convincingly won 3-1 and was off to face Maru for the last remaining playoff spot. And the Korean Terran surprised everyone in game 1. After making himself known as pretty much the #1 Turtle Terran, he opens up with a command center first build into a 2-base marine tank all-in of just 44 SCVs, which DRG just could not hold and gave Maru the early lead in this best of 5. In the second game we saw a 2-base tank push dealing a whole lot of damage, but this time of a more standard barracks first build. The Terran push however gets caught in a corner by a lot of Banelings, giving the Zerg another chance. But just 2 minutes later Maru pushed again with a lot of tanks and liberators and was able to close out the second map with yet another win, while still just being on 2 bases. Maru, known for his macro skills, really mixing it up. Well, what's there to say about game 3 on 2000 Atmospheres? Third time's the charm. Yet another 2-base tank push seals the deal and grants Maru the 3-0 victory, as well as the last and final playoff spot in the GSL Season 2. These playoffs have actually started yesterday already. First semifinals was Hero vs Bunny, and their series started off with a proxy on both sides, Proxy Marauder versus Proxy Gate. But as a probe surround killed the Marauders and the Stalkers were not able to breach the Terran wall, they went into some kind of macro game with Hero taking the gold base as his first expansion. On top of that, Bunny took a lot of damage from some unexpected Dark Templars he was not quite prepared for. So he just took his army and some SCVs, walked across the map and tried to brute force his way up the ramp into the Protoss Natural. When this initially failed, he pulled all the remaining SCVs and tried again, but it was no threat to Hero, who went up 1-0. The second game started off with a lot of damage by a single Oracle getting 7 SCVs for free and putting Bunny on his back foot. A little while later he also managed to snipe the Stim Research with some Blink Stalkers, pretty much sealing Bunny's fate already. And when charge finished, it was 2 vs 4 base plus additional 24 SCVs killed, forcing the Terran to tap out with absolutely no eco left. The third match of the map was GSL Nautilus, the infamous 4-player map in the pool. And as the contestants got spawn positions across from one another and Hero opted for a Nexus before Core, everything seemed to go in favor of the Protoss. Especially when the triple Widowmine drop got shot down with just 3 probes lost, seemingly destroying the last hope of the Terran. So Bunny once again pulls his SCVs in a 2-base tank push and somehow just wins the game out of nowhere. Hero just was unable to really clean up the Terran army that even pulled more SCVs as reinforcements, Bunny potentially starting the reverse sweep. Well, not really. The Widowmine drop on Hardwire dealt even less damage than on Nautilus, just a single probe got killed. From there on out, Hero just took control of the game, constantly annoyed Bunny with Blink Stalker harass and eventually just walked across the Terran defenses. With that, Hero is our first finalist for the GSL Code S Season 2. After that we had Dark, who was the only one going 4-0 in the second group stage, against a newfound and aggressive Maru. Well, at least we expected that. Truth told a little different, as we started the series with a 36-minute macro game that Maru just kept drawing out longer and longer, sitting back and slowly but surely gaining a lead until he was able to secure the win with a rather unimpressive fight in the middle of the map. Strong shift of gears for the second map though. Dark under immediate pressure as the Terran opens up with a proxy 2-Rex, but the experienced Zerg is a multiple GSL winner and does not straight up die to little annoyances like that. He also dealt great with any follow-up pressure like multiple Hellion run-bys or this 2 medevac drop in his main base, establishing an economic lead. Maru tested the waters once more with a 2-base tank push, trying to abuse the high ground near Dark's 4th base, but a large number of Zerg's most infamous unit, the Queen, just shut it down and tied up the series. But that was Dark's last glimpse of hope. After another drawn-out late-game victory for Maru on Hardwire, the Terrans secured the series 3-1 with a big 2-base tank push on Berlingrad. With 71 drones in the back, the Korean Zerg was unable to withstand Maru's pressure and is forced to tap out of the series. This means we will have a PvT final with Hero versus Maru. But these finals will have us waiting yet another week, as they won't be played before the 29th of July for some reason. We also had the last qualifiers for TSL 9 this week, starting with the last regional qualifier, which was the third and final European one. There were 3 qualification spots to fight for in a big double elimination bracket, and the first one to secure his entry was the Italian Zerg player Reynors, who played Protoss for 4 out of the 5 maps of the qualifying match. But in the previous round he actually played Zerg against DNS, while before that he played Protoss again versus the Ukrainian Terran Kars. So Reynors seems to be on the best way to become a random player in competitive Starcraft 2. The second qualifying match was a Polish duel between Eleza and Gerald, which the Protoss player was able to secure 3-1. Gerald with a great performance against the newest member of Team Liquid, who himself had very impressive performances lately, like the Nation War 7 win. He also had a second chance to qualify via the lower bracket qualifying match, but a suicidal fly stopped him in his tracks as he was about to take it in Game 4. Thanks to his fly friend, Denver was able to take it to Game 5 on Data C, but Eleza's roaches just were too strong for the French player. So the very last TSL 9 regional qualifier spot goes to the Team Liquid talent. But there were still 3 more spots open in the server qualifiers rather than the regional qualifiers. Starting over on the Asian server, where the Canadian Zerg Scarlet made it into the upper bracket final, where Nightmare was slightly too strong, winning 2-1 and dropping her to the lower bracket final where Nice was waiting. But this match went even worse for Scarlet, as Nice straight up won 2-0. This meant a Nightmare vs Nice PvP final, which lasted a mere 24 minutes. Nightmare convincingly takes the series 3-0 with some aggressive play and qualifies for TSL 9. Over in the European server qualifier, we saw a nearly unbeatable Skillus rushing through the bracket right into the upper bracket finals without dropping a single map. There he had to face the Polish Terran Spirit, who quickly beat him 2-0, including this week's Game of the Week. Game 2 on Data C was just insane. After a fairly standard opening and relentless Blink Stalker pressure, it somehow turned into a base race scenario. And a base trade in itself might not be the most uncommon thing in Terran vs Protoss, but this one had quite the entertaining ending to it. With his only remaining orbital flying to safety, Spirit had no answer against the roaming Dark Templar, quickly reducing his siege tank count to 0. He then tried to reclaim his main base by building a wall of barracks, but the Dark Templar got in before he could finish the barricade. It is a crazy situation. Spirit is completely out of SCVs and cannot afford to build any, but he could try to get some money with mules. Skillus, on the other hand, has a single probe on the map, but no money for a Nexus. And as he decides against morphing his Dark Templar into Archons, he has no anti-air units left. But as long as he does not morph them, he cannot win, as there are flying Terran buildings on the map. So it becomes a game of cat and mouse, with Spirit dropping the remaining buildings over and over again while the Dark Templar try to kill the remaining army. It peaks when Skillus builds one last assimilator in the Terran's natural. So it turns into an incredible fun but stupid micro war of Spirit dropping units for a single shot and picking them back up again while Skillus tries to snipe them. But that takes away all the Protoss attention, and the Terran manages to finally land his orbital command instead of being blocked again. This means he finally has a scan available again and can clean up the last assimilator. A crazy end to an insane game, and even though you know the result already, you should absolutely watch it. With that, Skillers dropped to the lower bracket final where he beat Christiana 2-1 to get the rematch and possibly the revenge against Spirit. Game 4 once again was some kind of base trade scenario that kind of stabilized after the Terran units retreated back to their own main. But a few minutes later we suddenly have a base trade again. Skillers is way too far ahead with more than double the supply, and so Spirit taps out, giving Skillers the 3-1 victory and the qualification spot for TSL 9. Last but not least, we had the American server qualifiers where we saw the Dutch Protoss Harstem charge through the bracket, beating Korean Terran Percival and Spirit, who tried another time after falling short in Europe, just to get stopped 2-0 by Trigger in the upper bracket final. But Harstem bounced back and got a close 2-1 victory and yet another PvP in the lower bracket against Nice. So just like Skillers, he was back for revenge in the qualifying match and got shut down completely. He was unable to take a single map off Trigger and lost 3-0 or 5-0 in the grand scheme. With that, the Canadian secured himself the very last spot in the Team Liquid Star League 9. The World Team League 2022 summer had its last round of its regular season, with Kaisi Gaming, Dragon Phoenix Gaming and Alpha X still fighting over that number 1 and number 2 spot. Starting off with a bottom clash between Platinum Heroes and SSLT, who are still looking to get their first win of the season. This was their chance as they faced the second lowest team, but as all three matchups ended in an even 1-1, the teams headed into the ace match, in which Art beat Firefly 1-0. This means even though SSLT can get a second point on the board due to forcing the ace match, they end the season 0-11. Also, both teams drop out of the league and have to re-qualify if they want to play in the next season. Then we had Team GP take on the Shopify Rebellion. Prince and Scarlet ended their duel in a 1-1 tie, but as Riang beat Harstem with a clean 2-0, Bian had to win both maps against the Mexican Zerg Champ to get into the ace match. The Korean Terran managed to do just that, and Scarlet was able to beat Prince a second time on Moondance, giving the Shopify Rebellion the 4-3 victory as well as the 4th place in the standings. The last matchup of day 1 was Psystorm vs Alpha X, and we had 3 dead even games ending 1-1 each, giving us the 3rd ace match of the day, in which MaxPax was able to beat Astrea thanks to an Adept Warp in on a very sneaky pylon in his opponent's main base. With that, Alpha X can only secure the 2nd place if Dragon Phoenix Gaming loses. But they had to wait a little bit longer for confirmation, as the second day of round 11 started with the Guangdong Freaks vs Team Liquid. And who would have thought we had yet another ace match? After Mana tied his series against Keen, Clem was 2-0'd by Armani, who was still playing with somewhat of a broken hand, and forced Elaser to 2-0 Su as well. But despite Clem's 0-2 defeat, his team trusted him to win the ace match against the Korean Zerg Su, who was able to beat the young Frenchie with the Slingbane Muta Ultra Forces in an exciting 20-minute ZVT, granting the Freaks their 8th win of the season as well as spot 6 in the playoffs. Team Liquid did not manage to qualify. Good Game Gaming surprised with a convincing win against Team NV. Even though they were already set for 10th place, Nice was the only player to drop a map against DRG, while Dream and Ratata beat Creator and Nightmare 2-0 each, resulting in a strong 5-1 victory. The very last clash of the season was the duel for first place, Kaisi vs DPG. And even though time took a page out of Maru's playbook and went up 1-0 against Dark in a 30-minute TVZ slugfest, the Korean Zerg was quick to retaliate and even up the score. Next, Solar managed to dominate the ZVZ against Rogue, winning 2-0 and preparing his team for the first place finish. Reynors only needed a single win out of 2 maps to secure the dub. But Hero had other plans. With some amazing Blink Stalker control, the Korean Protoss, who currently just keeps performing time after time, beat the Italian world champion runner-up with a clean 2-0, forcing the 5th ace match of this final WTL round. Kaisi then elected not to send Reynors in for a 3rd attempt against Hero, but rather sent the Chinese Terran player Time onto the battlefield, who attempted a small Marine Cyclone push at the 3.5 minute mark, which got brutally shut down. After that, Hero takes control of the game and slowly squeezes Time out of the game, securing his team the victory as well as the 1st place in the regular season, therefore directly qualifying for the grand final. Although it is interesting that Kaisi Gaming actually won more rounds this season and only ended up second as they needed to go to the ace match a lot of times, resulting in a tie point-wise, which DPG wins thanks to their better map score. The playoffs will start 12th of August with Team MV versus the Kwangdong Freaks. As always, we also had 3 ESL Open Cups again, starting over in Korea, where both finalists only dropped a single map, both in the semifinals. Hero beat Gumiho 2-1 in their PVT, while Byan turned the matchup around and won his TVP against Classic 2-1. Therefore, everyone was expecting an exciting finals, but Hero completely dominated the match, winning 3-0, including a just 5-minute long final game in which he opened up with a lot of gateway pressure. After Byan held, he tried to retaliate with an 8 marine drop in the natural, but as the medivac full of marines got sniped by some stalkers, he tapped out of the game as well as the tournament. Over in Europe, we had once again a fantastic performance out of the American Neep, who climbed to the semifinals, only dropping a single map to the Chinese Protoss Cyan. There he met the Korean EPT winner Hero, who he also beat 2-0. After defending Hero's one base Blink all-in on Tropical Sacrifice pretty convincingly, Neep is pressured by Blink Stalkers again, even though it is not an all-in this time. Hero's push does not really accomplish that much as he expands to his third simultaneously, so Neep just defends with a battery overcharge, walks across the map with his Blink Stalker Immortal army and takes the game, moving on into the finals where he would meet Reynor. The Italian Zerg with an impressive run himself, 2-0ing Hero Marine, Max Packs and Strange, but funnily enough dropping a map to the Swedish Zerg Fjand, who he once again faced as Protoss. But against Neep he struggled heavily, dropping the first 2 maps to Neep's impeccable Blink Stalker play. In the third game, however, Reynor rolled all over the High Templars with his Banelings just as Storm was finishing, resulting in the American tapping out immediately. This started Reynor's amazing reverse sweep, winning an exciting finals 3-2 as well as the whole ESL Open Cup 132 Europe. In America, history repeated itself. Just as Hero, the Korean EPT winner over in Europe, Reynor tried to get a second title this week. Over in America, he raced through the whole bracket, not dropping a single map until the semifinals as once again Protoss. There, Cure could stop the Italians off race pretty easily with a fast 2-0. That led into a purely Korean TVT clash against Byan, who got the dub 3-1 in an exciting final, including an insane game 4 on Stargazers. Some kind of early base trade with harassment units in which both players lose their attack force due to some sloppy micro turned into a desperation push out of Cure, as Byan was able to get some follow-up damage and snipe Cure's Raven. But it was too little too late. Byan was prepared, had superior eco and held on after some initial hiccups. And so, Byan got the third and final ESL Open Cup win this week. Now we will come to the clip of the week, and even though we had an amazing clip of Reynor's Protoss micro as you can currently see in the background, we have a clip that might be the single biggest missed opportunity in all of StarCraft history. Enjoy.
Oh, raise the depots, Mac.
Oh my god. No.
Oh. Did you just see that?
Look at us chuckling to ourselves. That is unreal, dude.
That's going to be it for today, but not before we discuss the origin of the hamster's name. The hamster's name comes from the German word Hamstern, which means hoard. This is a very apt way to describe how hamsters eat. They have pouches in their cheeks that they stuff with food. Then they will carry their hoard back to their colony so they can eat it later. Pet hamsters will often store food under their cage bedding. As a German myself, I was actually quite surprised by that, as I thought we'd call hoarding Hamstern because of the hamster and not the other way around. However, this marks the end of this week's StarCraft Today episode. Harstem will return again with an amazing fact about erasers. And if he doesn't, I count on you to spam the comments next week with "Where is our eraser fact?" Thank you guys so much for watching, and bye bye.